I apologize for my voice. It hurts me as much as it's going to hurt you. I'm John Owens, principal of Blue Mountain Middle School. We're definitely using the microphone because we are recording this information session just in case, so we can put it online just so the parents, future parents may take a look at it. So I'm going to introduce our Executive Director of Curriculum Instruction, Dr. Margaret Willer, and she'll kick off the evening.
I did make that brief. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. So we asked you to come this evening to really have a conversation about acceleration in math at the middle school. And I've only been here 2 years, but in the 2 years I've been here, Mr. Owens and I have had many summer conversations about accelerating students, not accelerating students, what are we doing with offering algebra to our 8th graders. A few weeks ago, we had the same presentation we're having this evening with kids who are coming up to middle school and will be 6th graders next year. So it was important for us to invite the rising 6th graders and rising 7th graders, as these are conversations that are, for some of you, right in front of us as we get ready for 17-18. So I'm not going to talk at all about math because that's certainly not my area of strength, but I certainly have been involved in conversations about whether to accelerate or whether not to accelerate. And I'm going to turn the math presentation part over to Marcia Bailey.
John's going to go first.
Oh, John's confusing me now. Is this a game? Okay, so I guess I'm giving it back to John, and then later on we'll hear from Marcia. I don't know how many of you know Marcia Bailey is our instructional leader of mathematics at the high school, math teacher extraordinaire, and she will walk you through some of the things that not only Hunter Cutson, but also the region has been doing some very deep thinking around. So back to John.
So I won't go too in depth, but a brief history, and I think it's worth it just because some of you may have older children, and on more than one occasion I've spoken with parents about math acceleration, and they're like, but that's not what happened with my older one. And I'm like, I know. So when I originally came to the middle school, the decisions for acceleration were done 5th grade coming into 6th grade. And it was unwieldy for a number of reasons. It wasn't particularly data-based, to be frank. It was more zip code-based in some ways. And we all agreed, and when I say we, there have been conversations over the years with middle school faculty and administration, high school faculty administration, and district administration. There's been a couple, there have been outside math consultants from BOCES. There was a math committee at one time with board members and parents and all the other people involved as well. So the decisions are not being made by the principal of the middle school by himself, and the decisions have changed over time. So the first switch was to have the 6th grade teachers have a crack at the 5th graders coming in, get to understand how they were doing, and we used to give as a district CTP4. It's a standardized, nationally standardized test. There's suburban stay 9s and national stay 9s. We used to use the suburban. The information was quite reliable, and then the district went away from using the CTP4. And then the state assessments were being utilized, but then state assessments between Common Core and the way they kept changing the way the tests were done, they weren't reliable even year to year, let alone anything more than that. So then they became somewhat less important. At one point, when we were using CTP4 data, we were double accelerating in the middle school. So some people are nodding. So they were actually middle school children that took algebra in 7th grade and geometry in 8th. Now it would be a small group, less than 20. And they always did really well, but what you're going to hear from Ms. Bailey is the kids that do well in 8th grade in algebra or whatever else we have, there's a decline over time as they go through high school, but I'll save that for Ms. Bailey. One of those great big committees made a decision that double acceleration was not appropriate, and part of the reason was that what that did was potentially had students taking calculus in their junior year of high school. And colleges are not going to accept multiple years of calculus from a high school. So then those students were taking electives anyway. So there was I use the term hurry up and wait. So there's a couple different ways you can hurry up and wait, and the double acceleration calls one of those. So we took it down a few notches, closed the spigots on, if you will. Then we talked about how many students, and this is always the thing, this is what happens, how many students really should be accelerated. And there is no magic number, there is no magic formula. Ms. Bailey will also tell you about a BOCES initiative where Westchester Putnam schools spoke about this acceleration. I'll speak just for a moment. With the middle school, I went to see what other schools do for the process in the middle school. I thought I was going to Yorktown BOCES and all these other great schools were going to tell us what to do. I wound up telling them our process, which I'll share with you momentarily, and they all stole it. So they're just like, oh, that's a good idea, we should do that. So I was like, oh, okay, because it's working so well for us. So basically, what we do in 6th grade, and it's happening right now as we speak, we're setting these dates and times. Any student in 6th grade who has a 90 or better in their classroom, okay, and or has a 3 or 4 on the state assessment. Now, I know a lot of people refuse the assessments, they're worth what they're worth, but for students who take the state assessment, if you get a 4 on that state assessment, because they're actually more rigorous than they were, it's more difficult than ever to get that 4. If a kid gets that 4, we're going to have him potentially in accelerated math. We're not going to not keep him because he has an 89.2 in his classroom. And some of the really, really smart kids are the ones that really, really don't want to do their homework, and then that might drag down the classroom average. So it's a very wide opening. It winds up being virtually half the cohort. So, typical cohort, they're a little lower than they used to be. So if it's 180 students in a cohort, and like about 90 of them will have the 90 or better, or the state assessment 3 or 4. Then you're invited to take a couple other assessments, all right? So one of them is a vestige of the CTP4, so it's a standardized test. It was nationally normal a long time ago. We use a couple different assessments to further assess the children. Then there's this complicated matrix we use, which uses the classroom performance and also these assessment results, and it really just ranks them. So, and it kind of equalizes the kid who has the 99 average or the 100 average or the 103 average in their math class might not do as well as other assessments, right? So it kind of really spreads it out in this array. And then that's the tricky part, and there are discussions as to how many students are going to be in the 7th honors sections, right? And we make a decision based on those results. Any questions about 6th grade before we go to 7th grade?
These extra assessments, were they done in the beginning of 7th grade? Or?
No, they're done at the end of 6th grade during the school day.
Okay, so between now and...
Yes. The question was, are they done? When have they done the 6th grade assessments? They're done in the during the school day in the very near future. Okay, that was easy. 7th grade honors. So now there's, and then those numbers ebb and flow based largely on the results of these matrices and how many students perform where. So I think, and also, it goes by number. So if you have 60 students, you're not going to put them in 2 classes of 30. We don't do math classes of 30 in Blue Mountain. So you might have 3 sections of 20, but another year you might have 2 sections of 25, something like that. So 7th honors, what we've done recently, we're going to do again, is the high school shared algebra readiness assessment. You can correct me if you want to call it something else, Ms. Bailey. With the middle school, we administer that in 7th grade, so that's coming up in the very near future too. And then there's a little more simplified matrix, because basically 7th honors, we're using the performance in the class, and we're distinguishing between homework and test grades and that sort of thing. Because they're also looking for a relative work ethic as well. And then we do that algebra assessment, and the high school math teachers grade those assessments with the middle school teachers. And then there's a whole little group between the district administration, high school and middle school administration, and faculty that make these decisions as to how many students are going to be in algebra. Any questions on that?
Well, there are a certain amount of spots for the 8th grade number?
No, it's not limited by anything, and we don't set up any artificial spots. And that's the rub, is deciding how many. But then I'll let Ms. Bailey talk more about this. But you get into an interesting phenomenon where many times the parents want the acceleration more than the students do. We actually have students who are very honest with their counselors. They'll actually, I'm not talking dozens, we're talking outliers, but they'll actually acknowledge that they tanked some of these other assessments because they don't want to be in algebra. Or like a 7H kid, it's like, I don't want to be in algebra. So it's a fascinating kind of thing. So what we do is that the students are in 7H this year. We've looked at them multiple times. There's nobody languishing in 7th honors with a 69 average. All right, so students in the 80s, because I don't know that there's anybody even below the 80s, but students in the 80s, there are discussions with teachers and counselors Are you trying your hardest? Are you trying too hard? We also don't want you to feel that you have to hire a tutor to get your child through 7th honors so that they can take algebra in 8th grade, because there's really no point. And there's even another way to get to calculus that I'll say from Ms. Bailey as well. That was the big change here. So I don't think there are too many questions. I'll take any more you might have. But the segue to high school is that what happened in the past, which very selfishly was uncomfortable for me, was I got to decide in middle school at some point, algebra, no algebra. And when you made those decisions, basically I was saying calculus or no calculus. So we were making decisions in 5th, 6th, or 7th grade that were going to potentially keep a child out of calculus in their senior year. And I don't care how careful and how many assessments we use and all that, you can't predict that success that many years in advance. So that's what Ms. Bailey was talking about, another way to get to calculus, even if you don't take algebra in 8th grade in Blue Mountain. You had a question?
Yes, I think it's probably always good just to confirm. So if they don't go into 7th grade honors, it's like math decisions are done for middle school.
Say it again?
If they don't go into the 7th grade honors, then they're trapped for the next 2 years right now.
Right, yes. It's a terrible word to use, but it's not untrue, yes.
And going into the Algebra 1, it's just based on the Algebra Readiness Test, or the state test also combined? And then
All right, let me just repeat that question, because this recording might actually help somebody someday. So your point was, and the parent said that it looked fairly obvious that if you don't get into that 7th honors, then you're not taking algebra in middle school, and that's correct. Okay? Your question was?
to get into Algebra 1, is it just based on that Algebra Readiness Test, or the state test combined also?
It's algebra readiness and classroom performance, because you've already gotten in there, and the results, we have roughly, it was less than last year, but we had between a quarter and a third of students refuse the test in this building. So right away, that really puts a spin on how much you can use that information. So to answer the question, it's classroom performance and that readiness assessment. Yes.
And is it the same sort of as 7th grade honors, like over the summer at some point you get a letter just saying you have this opportunity?
Yes, the question was, how do you find out if your child's in 7th honors? And you will get a letter saying that based on these assessments.
Algebra.
Algebra the same.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Yes,
If your 6th grader recommended to take the test, can he or she refuse?
absolutely. And if they don't
Without
want,
our permission?
this refusal thing's taking on a life of its own. My parents wanted me to, but I refuse. I don't know the answer. I don't know if that's happened yet. Usually 6th graders, when they get the letter and their parents ask them if they want to take it, and they say yes or no, you make a family decision. Haven't had it yet where a student comes in and we think they're going to take it because you want them to, and then they refuse.
Do you
Yes.
ever have it the other way around, where the child wants to take it, the parent says no?
Not that I recall, honestly. The question was, does it ever go the other way where you have the child that wants to be in and the parent doesn't think it's a great idea? Not to that point, not to the input where it gets to that point, but I will say there have been conversations like that. And these are, they blend together in my mind over the years. So different transitions from this program to that program. Over the years, there's certainly been a discussion where you have a teacher saying, look, she's trying so hard. She's coming every day at lunch. Like, she shouldn't have to come every day at lunch so she can do the homework. And, there are children that really overachieve, and you have a parent that's the kid, and the parent agrees with the teacher, like, you shouldn't have to work that hard for 7th grade math. So those things over time do occur, and eventually between the school counselor, the parent, the teacher, those kids eventually take it down a notch. But it's not like an administrative decision. Yes, ma'am.
If the child gets into the algebra, during the year, can she downgrade? Like if she can't do the algebra?
Yeah, great question. So if students in the algebra program, can they move down? And the answer is yes. I think of a couple of years ago now, but it's an interesting process. I find this kind of things interesting. So a couple of students in the past, young men, and they were not stellar students. So their grade point average, their class average weren't going to put them in algebra. But I think it was the CTP4 in that day, and if not, it was a state assessment. They did so well that they clearly had an aptitude for math and called their parents. I remember one like, are you sure you have the right child? Because they just called him because he doesn't do his homework. It's like, he doesn't do his homework, and he's got an 85, but he killed with this assessment that most of the kids in his class with 90s didn't do as well. So we had those children in algebra, and they acknowledged that they weren't trying their hardest. They acknowledged that they weren't always doing their homework because they didn't feel like doing it. Everybody saw that there was no point in having them take a 77 in the algebra class, let alone that or worse on the Regents. So they went into Math 8. So we can certainly do that. It's not a goal, of course, so that's the whole, and it's usually not a problem because if anything, the issues are on the other end where the students, wanted to be there and weren't. And those were the hours of phone calls I've had over the years. And before Dr. Roller, it was another doctor who, and when I didn't give them the right answer, the parents went to them. But any minute now, Ms. Bailey's going to tell you about this super safety net that will solve all these problems. Any last questions for me? I can come back if you think of one. Okay, so Ms. Bailey.
Okay. What is this thing? This way? This way? That way? No? I hit the yellow thing. Oh, okay. You want to be my button pusher?
Okay.
Okay. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Marcia Bailey. I live here in the district. I've worked in the district for over 40 years, teaching math at the high school, all different grade levels.
44
Over 40.
Over 40.
At Henry Hudson High School, we've prided ourselves on trying to provide the best possible mathematics education for all of our students so that they can succeed on the college level and in whatever career they choose. And we've been pretty pleased with what we've done. We've gotten pretty good feedback from the kids over the years. And we have strived very hard to provide a math program at the high school for every child, not just the accelerated kids. The second bullet, I went too fast. I just really wanted to stress that whether it's a special education child, somebody that doesn't succeed in math, or somebody that does. I had wanted to maybe mention one thing when we met with the incoming 6th grade parents, and I didn't, talk about accelerated students, and I'm sure maybe some of you are aware of this. If your child had been that bright in the Henry Hudson School District, we would have found out about him or her and done what we did with a child well over 10 years ago that completed Calculus 2 at the end of 8th grade. So Henry Hudson has been there and done that for appropriate children when it's necessary. Because now I want to go to that next slide and give you the sad facts that have been hitting us like a brick wall over the last several years. And it is certainly not something I am at all proud of. I am not proud of this at all. In our current senior class, over 30% of the young men and women that were accelerated math students have dropped out of the accelerated math program. Many of them have dropped out of math altogether. They sat at Blue Mountain Middle School. At the time, the current seniors took what was called integrated algebra. They were before Common Core. At the high school, we have grade requirements to advance on to our accelerated and Regents level, R-level courses. To advance into an R-level course, you need to maintain a 75 average. We don't think that's asking a whole lot. Regents level, yes. Our accelerated students, once they finish the Algebra 2R, to go and become an accelerated student aiming for calculus in the senior year, to go into the Calculus 1 level class for their pre-calc and calculus experience. We ask them to maintain an 80 and 85. An 80 on the final exam, 80 final average, or vice versa. The cream of the crop in the accelerated group go on to what is called our BC calculus path. There they would, in their junior and senior year, do pre-calculus, calculus 1, calculus 2. And we have a nice, albeit small cohort that do that very successfully every year. Coming out of their Algebra 2R class, they need to maintain a 90-95. 90 on the final exam, 95 final average, or vice versa. The current senior class, 32% of the students that were accelerated at Blue Mountain Middle School are no longer accelerated. Many of them have dropped out of math. We have over 90% of the senior class enrolled in a math class. The reason why it's not 100% is because accelerated students have dropped out. They are turned off to math because they were smart at it when they were younger and they were good at it. But as the math got more and more challenging, it became too much rigor for them. We worked with them, we provided peer tutors for them, they just couldn't cut it, or in some instances, as kids grow up, their interests change. But we honestly feel that they would have been better served by not having been accelerated in the middle school. The numbers leading up to this year's senior class, the kids that are college, freshmen, sophomores, those numbers were in the 20% ranges. And the numbers were growing. Then came Common Core. I'll reserve all my comments about that for later. 42% of the current juniors, they've only been with us in high school for 3 years, that were accelerated in the middle school have now dropped out. And there's a possibility that at the end of June this year, going into their senior year, that number could grow. We're not at all happy about this. We don't want to see kids that were stars in math at one point not doing well in math. We don't want to see them turned off to math. We don't want to see them not taking math, because they'll have to take it in college. Even the kids that go on and major in things you would never believe would need a math course, almost every college requires some type of math course. Now, you go to the next slide. We aren't alone. A group of math teachers meet regularly through Putnam, Northern Westchester, BOCES, and this is a growing problem in many of the area districts. We talk, we stay in communication, and as we saw these numbers increase, for the past 3 years now, these 7 districts, Bedford, Croton, Henhod, Lakeland, Pattis, North Salem, Ossining, and Putnam Valley, we have been working together as a team, and we have come up with what we feel could stall some of those numbers I showed you a minute ago. We have what we're going to call a 3-in-2 acceleration program for students at the high school. I'll give you my little 25-second synopsis of Common Core math. The math I taught to your older children, I taught to you, is not
Your parents.
your parents. I haven't taught a grandchild yet, although I know there's one in the high school. 9th grade math is now 8th grade math. The 9th grade math, Algebra 1, Common Core, now contains an awful lot of what you would have learned in an Algebra 2 class. Geometry stays pretty much the same They've pushed a little more down into it. The Algebra 2 that we're teaching now contains an awful lot of pre-calculus topics. And the pre-calculus that we are now teaching, we're first year now on the Common Core pre-calculus at the high school. We're doing a very rigorous calculus unit right now, or we just finished it. It's not the same math you took. So the 7 districts came up with this plan where we wanted to try to see as many of the kids as possible get the foundations that they need, particularly for algebra in the middle school. Math 6, 7, and 8 are crucial. 5-10 years ago, there was an awful lot of duplication between topics in Math 8 and in integrated algebra, Math Course 1, Math A, whatever you called it. It was possible for a good, bright child to skip one of those years for the teachers to easily combine those 2 years into one. Now it's not. The topics that are in Math 8 are the fundamentals in algebra. The topics that are in Math 9, or the Algebra 1 at the high school, expand upon those and do an awful lot of Algebra 2. So what we're planning on doing, and I'll talk about how we're implementing this in September, 8th graders that take Algebra 1 will not be a part of this. 8th graders that take Math 8 could be. They'll come to the high school, take Algebra 1 as a 9th grader, and if they do well, we're aiming for 90s at the high school in Algebra 1, including on the Regents exam. They could be selected to go into a course that we're going to call 3 and 2. The official BOCES 7 district name is Foundations for Calculus, Year 1 and Year 2, where we will follow a course outline where every single day's lesson has been already planned for the 10th and 11th grade to cover all of the Common Core topics in geometry, Algebra 2, and pre-calculus. That will leave the senior year for AP Calculus. If the child is super, we'll get that child ready for BC Calculus. That's Calc 1 and Calc 2 in the senior year. If the child is a good, solid student, they'll be ready to do calculus in the senior year. Now, we talk a lot in high school about math maturity. We find that an awful lot of kids in the past have matured mathematically. Mr. Owens said it perfectly before. It used to be that if a child wanted to accelerate and they didn't start the acceleration process in this district in grade 5, they were stuck. I do know that we have over the years. I've tutored many of them over the summer. We've been able to move kids along that really demonstrated their math maturity and were able to get through the system and accelerate them. But it was the case. If you weren't accelerated in 5th grade, that was it, and had another. And many of those other districts. After experiencing the heartache, experiencing Common Core, we and those other districts feel that this is really going to be something very beneficial for the kids. Last year, at the middle school, in the 8th grade, they held the line a little bit on the number of students that were accelerated and took Algebra 1. This year, we have more sections of Algebra 1 at the high school. We have currently identified in the current 9th grade class 50 children for this 3 and 2 program to be implemented in the fall. Now, there were about 20 kids that took Algebra 1 last year over here, correct? Because they're currently now in our geometry.
I don't recall.
Yeah, it's about 20 kids were accelerated. We honestly feel that these additional 50 children who'll end up in the same place senior year in that AP Calculus class, we honestly feel that these 50 kids might actually end up being stronger than the ones who were accelerated in the middle school. Come back in 3 years, we'll let you know. All right? But we feel that the solid foundations of all the algebra in Math 8, the solid foundation of all the algebra in Algebra 1, and the maturity of being another year or two older before we've accelerated, will now give these kids a real good chance of taking calculus. Our goal in the high school, we would like more kids to take calculus. We don't want to see these kids not succeed in math and drop out. We're not seeing our mainstream kids drop out. We're not seeing our SPED children drop out. We're seeing our accelerated kids drop out. We had to do something. And this is what we came up with. If you go to the next slide, it just outlines a little bit of what I've said. All right, accelerate at a more appropriate grade level, prepare them for calculus, all right, create a more foundationally strong college student, and promote the Common Core standards. I may not necessarily love all the Common Core standards. I'm not necessarily opposed to most of them. I'm opposed to how New York necessarily rolled them out, but it's still math. And over the years, as we proceed through the Common Core and through the changes that the state is going to be coming down the pike with, because it is going to change a little, if we feel that we can go back to having a much stronger acceleration program in the middle school, we'll be the first to do it. We'll be the first to tell the middle school, accelerate. But right now, we're stuck with kids that are turned off to math, and we're not happy about that. So here's what we are proposing. Yeah.
Hi. Can you talk a little bit more about, I'm not fully understanding why there's such a large percentage that are dropping off. Is it the Common Core standards are too high, too hard for that age group?
We feel that unfortunately, as number one, we're still at the infancy of the implementation of the Common Core. All of the kids, whether they were mainstreamed or accelerated, and particularly so with some of the accelerated kids, lost out on some instruction in some of the topics. Things just moved. All of a sudden, something that was always taught in 8th grade is now taught in 6th grade. Well, that whole cohort of children missed out on that topic, and the teachers are very well aware of that, and we all made every effort to catch those kids up, and we're still doing so. That's part of it. And that's why I say, as things change over time, we may come back and say, oh, our kids are really mastering the math, starting now with 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade. So we're going to be in a position to have more accelerated kids in the middle school. But right now, we haven't seen that yet. And we've got to do something. We know how difficult, unfortunately, some of this material is for the children. And they just aren't ready for it. And pushing them too early to be doing a lot of this harder math is not necessarily helping them. We feel that if we can get them to the same end product, it's worth a try. Yeah.
Can I just, so what I'm hearing from you is that it's better for them to go in regular math classes instead of honors math.
Not every child. You know your child. I don't.
But in general, it sounds like there's more preparation.
If you feel your child is on top of the world, push him. Push him or her.
Yeah, I don't believe in pushing
Don't,
kids to do
but
anything.
what we want to come out here is informing parents that just because it used to be the case that if you weren't accelerated in math, you didn't get to calculus.
What-
That is not the case anymore.
Just throw the question out, why do you need to be in calculus in high school?
And to be very honest with you now, we're trying to push more kids because the colleges are telling us, the colleges are telling the kids, they need AP statistics more than they need AP calculus. Again, depending on their major. But more college kids need to take a heavy-duty statistics class nowadays than they need to take a calculus class. Calculus isn't the end-all. It's a wonderful branch of math.
Yeah, if you really like it and it's your thing.
Yeah.
You know, that's,
And there is a lot of relationship to algebra in calculus. So having very solid foundation in algebra is critical to success in calculus. But calculus isn't for everybody. We're really pushing our AP statistics. The seniors are signing up for their college courses and whatnot now, and I happen to teach 2 sections of pre-calc this year. They're coming in, I have to take statistics next year. Well, I think I've been telling you for a few years, you're going to need to do that. And
in whatever major you're
whatever major. More majors are now requiring statistics than they are calculus. We still want to have a lot of calc. We still want to offer it. We still have a lot of kids in this district that belong to be accelerated. They belong to be accelerated in the middle school. They belong to be accelerated at the high school. We are now offering an opportunity for the kid that might not quite be ready to be accelerated in middle school. We've got Plan B ready for you. It's an option. Yeah.
So 32% and 42% dropout rate is obviously not good, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are not happy about it. But have you done any kind of exit dropout interview with or survey with the kids, understanding what was the reason behind and try to find underlying problems?
There are a lot of underlying problems. A lot of them don't want to do the amount of work that's necessary. Mr. Tulo, who's been a teacher at the high school for an awful long time, is our BC Calculus, our Calc 2 teacher. And he takes the kids for the BC generally for 2 years, junior and senior year. His expectation day one is usually telling the kids, you love math. There'll probably be an hour and a half to 2 hours of homework every night. Well, that child that wasn't doing a whole lot of homework in the middle school probably isn't going to be doing a whole lot of homework necessarily in the high school either. Yeah.
The other thing is that it's a more positive reason, but my own children, Arlington High School, algebra in 8th grade. My son took AP Art in high school. He took AP English for multiple years. He had other areas of interest. So it still happened to him to hurry up and wait because he took the algebra in 8th grade and then didn't take it in senior year. He was an art major in college and the math thing didn't hit him. My daughter, same thing, algebra in 8th grade. I'm paying for a tutor for pre-calc where there's no regents, and they tell me it's hard. It's like, you're making it hard, but they're trying to get them ready for calculus, which of course she didn't take. And she's an education major, so when she got to college, it's a statistician. So a lot of the social sciences, they want the stats. The high school, in the process over the years that this has taken place, has added the Project Lead the Way courses. So now you have kids that are saying, okay, this math is getting harder and harder. I went too fast, too soon. But now I can go into these engineering classes, these biomed classes. Even for a student in a typical high school, if they want, again, my son, he wanted to take music, a language other than English, and art, he couldn't take lunch. So when there are that many interests and that many things, something has to give. For some of these strong students, it's math. So there's more positive results too. There's a in the back.
Yeah. Hi.
I completely understand what you're saying, and I guess my question is, were there predictors that, other than the test and other than knowing your child and whatever, that would have predicted you shouldn't have accelerated them, that they would end up one of those, like like my daughter, she's strong math, and I don't know how she tested, because I don't have those results, and I don't know how she is going to test in the placement test, but I don't know, like I'm the kind that like, you go max like as much as you can, and if we can't do it, then we'll back off, but, so I don't know if that's the right thing, like is there parameters that you saw that maybe that kid shouldn't have been pushed in, or not pushed, they shouldn't have done it in middle school? Are you seeing like a pattern in those people who have dropped out?
I wish I could tell you that there were cut and dry predictors. It's kind of like Mr. Owens was saying. Some of the kids, it just becomes too much. They get involved and interested in other courses at the high school level. We don't want to see them not do as well in a class. They don't want to have a 75, a 78 on their transcript, so they drop the class. That's the reality of it. In math class, it's kind of hard to, well, I can interpret it this way or that way, and write an essay, a persuasive essay one way or another. Math, you either get it right or you don't.
A couple patterns I've seen. One of them is when the parent wants it more than the student.
Yeah.
And the counselors in middle school are with your children for 3 years, so they, sometimes we're like, told you so. The other pattern that we see is the student that has the aptitude, so they can take that CTP4, which is a quantitative reasoning. It's the kind of assessment where you're not supposed to get 100. You're supposed to hit a wall, have to start figuring stuff out, and eventually not be able to do so. Some kids do really well on that, but they don't have those student skills yet. So again, you feel like you want to give them the opportunity, so now they're in algebra. They don't have the student skills, and as Ms. Bailey said earlier, you can rely on those natural talents. It's like an athlete or a musician. You can get along at a certain level until you walk into a room with the next level, Section 1 athletes or, a NISMA, top students, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm not as good as they are. So a couple patterns like that. After this year, 6th grader so if you choose and they choose to go through this, we can tell you where they fall in the spectrum, for what it's worth, but I would say it's worth something. Right, and we said that to parents. It's like, look, the number I used before, say we wind up with 75. And then we tell you with the matrix, she's in the bottom third. She's the 25th out of the 75. Well, why is that? Well, her average brought her up, but those assessments brought her down, or vice versa, or whatever. It sounds like her average would bring her up, and maybe some of these other assessments, she's like, whoa, what happened? So those are a couple.
And the teacher who's worked with them all year, obviously they have that input as well, saying that I think she should move up, I think she should stay.
But to be really, so the question was, and it's a good one, and it's a tricky one, because the question was that obviously the teacher has a lot to say about this. Not so much, for a variety of reasons, because you get this distorted view, and it's a middle school conundrum. You have students, overachieve might be too harsh of a way to put it, but middle school, they want students to be successful and feel good, so they recycle tests. All right, so you got an 85, okay, but then you go and you recycle it, and now the new grade is higher. So that's why half the class is in the honor roll, or half the class is eligible for these assessments. A lot of students have the ability to do well. We're also doing a weird thing in middle school that you don't see in elementary, where we're not distinguishing between learning standards and other things. Elementary, plays well with others. 4, can't divide double-digit numbers. 2, but it gives you a better picture. In 6th grade, 93. 93 what? 93. I don't like it, but parents are more used to it, so they don't complain. I think it's funny that you don't miss the elementary report cards, which were so much more comprehensive, and you're okay. But that's what we're used to. 93. It's an A-, not as good as an A, better than a B+. Yes.
I just was curious about something that you said about homework in high school. Just knowing that you hear a lot about kids in high school, kids in college. I mean, I have nephews that work till 3 in the morning, especially if they're playing sport and whatever. What has been your experience for kids that do take the honors class in middle school? That I think most of the kids that I hear, maybe I'm wrong, but most of the kids that are in honors class kind of just do their homework. It's not really overly burdensome to them. Do you find that that kind of translates to high school? Because like when you said an hour and a half, like that scares me because that's like one subject, and my daughter gets home at like 8 o'clock at night every day, and but she loves math, but that's like a scary concept.
Well, you also have to remember on the high school level, we have a 9-period day. We do not recommend that a child take 9 classes, although some children and parents make that choice. They do usually have time that they have to learn how to manage to get their work done. Many of the kids are in school long before first period starts. Many kids utilize their lunch period. It's 40 minutes. They don't spend 40 minutes eating. They may spend 40 minutes talking on their phone or whatever. It's their free time. And many of the kids opt for a free period as an upperclassman, especially for the athletes. We do at the high school allow in-season athletes to be exempt from their physical education class. It affords an opportune time for those kids to spend in school getting their work done. Now, many of the athletes take advantage of that. Many don't. We have a pretty strict non-eligibility policy, which doesn't only apply to athletes, it applies to kids that are involved in clubs and activities and drama and whatnot at the high school, where they have to be passing all of their courses in order to participate. There's opportunities for them to do it. And whereas their math homework is going to be there every night, in all of their math courses, it's particularly at that way high upper level that it kind of extends above and beyond. But it's a college level class. It has to be taught at that level, or you're not getting your money's worth. So to get the results that we get, which are phenomenal, from those students on their AP exams, and they get the credit in college, they have to do the work, and they choose to do it. Now, some of the kids that are initially geared towards this BC calculus say, you know what, AB is good enough for me. So maybe there's only 45 minutes to an hour every night instead of the hour and a half. But for the kids that really want it, we're there. We've also offered a class above and beyond the Calculus 2, a problem-solving and linear algebra elective, as needed for those kids that really want it. We want to push them and give them every opportunity to do well. But then on the flip side, we don't want to see them failing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can I say a little bit more about the 3 and 2? It sounds like a great program, right? It sounds like you really addressed potential gap. And it sounds like it's also brand new to Hen HUD.
Yeah, it's brand new to all of the districts that are participating in it. Ossining, I believe, started to implement it this year. They have a group of kids that are currently 10th graders that they've started the program with, and I believe Bedford has done likewise. We're going to be implementing it next year, so we'll certainly get information out to the parents, let everybody know how it's going. I know some of the other districts are another year out as far as their implementation is concerned. So
You had one more slide too, if you
want,
with the criteria for that.
Yeah, that's our criteria when we pick at the end of 9th grade. We're using their quarter grades. I mean, it's very similar to what is done in the middle school. I mean, it's consistent across the board. The Common Core Regents score, you can't opt out of a Regents. I know you can opt out 3 through 8, but they have to have the 5 Regents exams so they don't get the high school diploma. So the opt-out kind of goes away there. And we do have a teacher recommendation form that we're in the process of continuing to tweak. We met with our 3 and 2 cohorts last week out at BOCES to kind of get ready, because there are a number of us that will be implementing this in the fall.
Yeah, I guess where I was coming from, as I said, I think it's a great thing that you put together, but the reality is, like, for the sixth graders, we're about 3 years away from this decision point, and with such a brand new program, it's a little hard to predict, is this what it's going to be in 3 years?
I would venture to say for the current sixth graders that would be going into 7 honors or regular 7, I mean, you can still do 7 honors. It doesn't mean you end up going into Algebra 1 as an 8th grader. I would say that this program will be in place while your kids proceed through the district, unless the state does some crazy radical things. I mean, they've come out with changes, proposed changes to the Common Core standards. They really don't impact the high school math standards that much. You know, one little topic here, one little topic there. I'll be very honest with you, and I'm very proud to say we try very hard to teach our classes above the level of the Common Core standards, and not because we want to say, hey, we're doing better. We're doing it because we know the kids need it for college. The Common Core standards have left out some very, very important topics that the kids need for calculus. The Common Core standards have left out some very important topics that the kids need for statistics, even though they have totally revamped the curriculum. The high school math curriculums now all contain a very large amount of probability and statistics. And as the kids get into the high school and you become more familiar with the new SAT and ACT exams, you'll start to become familiar with that. Those exams are now Common Core based, and whereas there used to be on an SAT test, approximately 25 to 30% of the questions were geometry based. That's only about 5 to 10% now, and close to a third of the questions are based on probability and statistics, where in the past that had only been maybe 5% of the questions. Common Core addresses that. Obviously, our changing curriculum has, and we've studied what the College Board and ACT want the students to perform well at. So we're trying to not only cover the Common Core standards, but what will make Hendrick-Hudson students successful on those standardized tests as well, and get them ready for college or the workforce as best we can. Yeah.
So if you do get into the Algebra 1 and 8th grade, you still follow the same path as geometry to our...
Right, that would be the traditional acceleration path. So the way things operate right now, we have in our geometry R classes, we have 9th graders and 10th graders. And they're all in there together. They're all mathematically at the same place. We don't segregate out the accelerated students until their junior year in the traditional acceleration program. So it's Geometry R as a 9th grader, Algebra 2R as a 10th grader. Then, if they meet the grade cutoff, they go into the pre-calc, leading them towards AB or BC calculus. The new plan would have 9th graders coming in, doing Algebra 1, and then at the end of Algebra 1, we select for the 3 and 2 program, and those kids do geometry, Algebra 2, and pre-calculus in those 2 years, and end up in the same AP calculus class.
They're not taking the geometry regions or Algebra 2 anymore.
Right. The high school, if a parent and a child choose to want to take the Regents exams, Hendrick-Hudson, along with the list is 10 times the size of the list I put up on the 7 schools in this 3 and 2 program. Many of the area districts abandoned the upper level math Regencies back when the standards changed in 2005. And it's something that we explored doing at that point. I grew up in New York. I took all the Regents exams. I know many of you did. It was something it was hard for us to give up. But when we first saw the Common Core Regents exams, personally, as an educator, I'm embarrassed by what the state calls a Regents exam now. There are errors in it. There are questions that I do not particularly feel are appropriate for the children to be taking as a exit exam for a course. Some of the problems are wonderful problems that I have subsequently used in my classroom as problem-solving activities. Let's work on this in small groups. Let's see who comes up with a solution. We'll share out how we did it. There's some great problems, but they aren't the kinds of problems that we would want to see our children assessed on. Statewide, the scores have not been phenomenal. And then the thing that is the most disheartening, when the first Algebra 1 Common Core Regents came out, that the current seniors took as 9th graders, the state came out with how they were going to scale the Regents, because these are not, that you get a score out of 100, but it doesn't mean they know that percentage of the work or anything. The state scaled the Algebra 1 Regents, and still does, so that 3.8% of the children that take the test score 85 or higher. I don't think that's right.
What?
I have from State Ed the slides that show that. The new Common Core English Regents, it's about 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%. You guys know how you guys go 1, 2, 3, and 4. Well, on the Common Core exams in the high school, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for English, it's about 20% get 5s, 20% 4s, 20% 3s, and that actually isn't, it's a little higher than that, and not so many, the 2s and the 1s. In the math, they scaled it so that only a very select few children are capable of attaining the really high scores. And we're very proud of it because we get a lot of kids to get good grades. And in other areas of the state, it's not that way. And we have to give the Algebra 1 Regents, it's a graduation requirement in New York State. But when we saw the same types of things happening with the geometry and the Algebra 2, we also, Common Core in New York did some very strange things mathematically to a lot of the topics in Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc, which we as a department felt kind of destroyed some of the beauty of the mathematics and the children's ability to see how topics grow and evolve. And we actually, following another state's curriculum for Common Core standards for our Algebra 2 and Pre-Calc to better meet the needs we feel mathematically for the kids as they progress forward in whatever they do. And that includes their standardized testing, statistics, and readiness for calculus in college. Yeah.
So I just want one small clarification. So if they are not taking the geometry Regents if they go through the 3 and 2 program?
They can. Last year was the first year we started this. At the high school, we had about 140 students in Geometry R. 4 children took the Geometry Regents. They all passed the Geometry Regents, but they also had to take our department-generated, which we've shared with other area districts to just make sure we're on board with things. Our exam is advertised as tough, very rigorous. That's what the big R stands for, rigorous, but fair and fairly graded. And the children that took the Regents did better on our final exam. You don't get hundreds in high school math, but I'll just tell you that right now.
No, you're saying they can, so.
But-
if they don't-
Yeah, it's your choice,
But then-
and the child's
Can
choice.
they graduate with a Regents diploma with that?
Every child graduates with a Regents diploma because it's based on the 5
The only math
Scores.
regions they are required to do is
is Algebra 1.
Any other
Yeah.
math regions are optional.
What I push your child for is the diploma with honors. And that means that they scored 90 or better on those 5 regions.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah, one
I
more.
just wanted to reiterate what you said before. I know she had the question about the work in high school, and all I have to say is that the teachers are always there for extra help. I mean, my son went through Algebra 1 in 8th grade, took Geometry R with Mrs. Bailey. He's in Algebra 2 R now, and now he's being recommended to go into BC. I was worried, but he's like, I can do it. And like I said, the teachers are always there for extra help, no matter what, as long as you talk to them. So I have nothing more than good things to say so far, with the math program.
Thank
It opens
you.
up a lot of opportunities
Yeah.
also for his senior year, where he can take other stuff, which will help him in college.
Mhm. And we push the kids to do as much mathematically as they can. Any child I do not think is challenging themselves in math on the high school level, I go through their schedules. I call parents and say, your child should be in this class, not taking the easy way out. It works both ways. But if your child is signed up for a class that I don't think they really should be in, we don't want to see them fail. And it is hard. But kids do succeed and do very well. Please feel free to email me or Mr. Owens or Dr. Roller if there are any questions about this.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.